Welcome back to DFC Books. Today we are diving deep into, well, a really singular text. It's a shimmering, iridescent tale that has influenced generations of seekers and artists. Anyone, really, who's ever grappled with the big questions. We're talking about Hermann Hesse's Siddhartha.
It really is a phenomenal book, a truly rich, colorful novel, all about that search for self-knowledge. And just for context, we're using the Bantam edition, which was copyrighted way back in 1951. It has a translation that I think really captures the spiritual weight of the original.
And our mission here today isn't just to, summarize the plot. We really want to map the stages of Siddhartha's lifelong spiritual quest. So we'll be tracing the emotional, the philosophical turning points that really define his journey.
That's it, exactly. And the whole narrative is driven by this core idea, this path to understanding what's called the Atman, the innermost being.
Right. This indestructible self that is, at its core, one with the entire universe. And the foundational premise here, which we're going to see tested again and again, is that this kind of knowledge, well, it can't be taught. You can't just read it in a book. It has to be found through direct and often very messy personal experience.
Yes. We're essentially tracking the destruction of the teaching self and the birth of the experiencing self.
And before we jump into that first stage, we really want to hear from you. If you have a moment, please go down to the comments and request any book or philosophy or really any piece of literature you'd like us to explore in one of these deep dives. We love tailoring these to what you're curious about.
Okay, so let's begin with the seeker himself, with Siddhartha. He's introduced to us not as some, naive kid starting from scratch. He's a Brahmin son, and he is already operating at an extremely high spiritual level.
He's so incredibly defined from the very beginning. He's brilliant, born into a life of privilege, and he's already proficient in deep meditation. This detail is so crucial. It raises the stakes immediately because he's already mastered the established path.
Right. The text tells us he knows how to pronounce the holy word Om silently, inwardly, with the intake of breath, and then breathing it out with his whole soul. His brow radiates this glow of pure spirit. His father is immensely proud, expecting him to become this great learned priest, a prince among Brahmins.
But that's where the problem starts, isn't it? Despite having all this accumulated knowledge of the Brahmins, which is described so beautifully as pure as honey collected by the bees, he is deeply internally distressed.
He has the knowledge, but not the experience of it. The theory just cannot calm his heart.
And this dissatisfaction, it forces him to question the absolute foundations of his world. He starts asking these radical, really uncomfortable questions, like, do the sacrifices actually bring happiness? Are the gods, like Prajapati, who is this lord of creation in Hindu tradition, are they just transient forms created like you and me, destined to just pass away?
Or is Atman the ultimate single self, the only one who created the world? He sees the wisdom in the holy verses, like, your soul is the whole world. But he can't find that Atman in the teachings.
He knows how to temporarily lose himself in medication to achieve this brief, blissful state of non-existence, but he can't permanently connect to it. He's an intellectual genius who has just hit the ceiling of what intellect can do.
And that is the conflict that drives the entire story forward. It's Hesse's central challenge to conventional religion.
Yeah.
Knowing the wisdom isn't the same as embodying it.
And so he has to leave.
Which brings us to the first real stage of his journey, the transition from Brahmin to ascetic, starting with his departure. And the narrative gives us this beautiful, very detailed character dynamic between Siddhartha and his loyal friend Govinda.
Govinda is so essential to understanding Siddhartha, isn't he? He's the mirror, the follower. Siddhartha is the driving force, the restless seeker. Govinda shares that longing, but ultimately he's looking for a teacher, for a system to follow.
Whereas Siddhartha is seeking only the innermost being itself. And the most important event here, really, is the scene of his departure. It's what establishes the depth of his commitment. He knows arguing with his father is pointless.
So he just stands there, unmoving, hour after hour through the entire night. It's an incredible act of silent, non-violent will.
His father keeps coming back, filled with anger, then anxiety, then fear, seeing his son standing in the moonlight, then the starlight. By dawn, the father is broken, not by an argument, but by the sheer unwavering force of Siddhartha's spiritual resolve.
And that's what allows him to leave his secure, privileged life. He sees that the traditional teachings only give him a temporary escape. They don't lead to a permanent realization of Atman.
So he chooses the path of radical self-denial. He's aiming for complete emptiness to become, and this is a quote, empty of thirst, desire, dreams, pleasure, and sorrow. He's literally trying to kill the self, hoping that by negating everything, he'll reveal the ultimate positive truth.
Which leads us right into his time as a samana, this period of extreme asceticism in Chapter 2.
The physical transformation is pretty shocking. It's meant to highlight the psychological struggle. He grows long nails, a dry, bristly beard. He endures extreme self-mortification, fasting until he's dizzy. His goal is the peace of an emptied heart through pure thought.
And he masters it, right. The book says he learns how to lose the self, dwelling in non-being for days at a time. He learns to endure pain, voluntary suffering. The discipline isn't criticized for lacking power, it's criticized for lacking permanence.
And that's where his intellectual restlessness comes roaring back. During this time, he looks at the world of ordinary people, businessmen, lovers, princes, with this profound, almost spiritual contempt.
He sees them as just illusions and decay. The world tasted bitter. Life was pain. That's a direct quote. And this contempt, it fuels his denial, but it's a fuel built on judgment, which is inherently dualistic. It's incomplete.
Exactly. And that judgment leads him to his crucial insight on the samana life. This is the huge turning point. He realizes that this extreme flight from the self through self-denial is nothing more than a temporary palliative against the pain of life.
He uses that brilliant cutting analogy, right? Comparing the samana's meditation to a driver of oxen drinking a few bowls of rice wine.
Yes. In both cases, the self is temporarily escaped, the pain is dulled, but neither one is true, permanent liberation. He hasn't found Atman, he's just found a very sophisticated, very noble form of spiritual distraction.
It's such a moment of profound intellectual honesty. He's mastered two whole systems, intellectualism and asceticism, and he's found both of them wanting because neither one delivered that unified experience.
Which sets the stage perfectly for the ultimate confrontation in Part 2, his encounter with Gautama, the Buddha. Having exhausted the traditional paths, he and Govinda start hearing these rumors of the illustrious one, Gautama, in Chapter 3. The anticipation is just immense.
The rumors describe a man who has completely escaped the sorrows of the world, brought the cycle of rebirth to a standstill, and achieved nirvana. Believers claim he's done extraordinary things, remembered his former lives, performed wonders, spoken with the gods.
But importantly, Hesse gives us the counterpoint, the doubters. They call him an idle fraud who scorned sacrifices and practiced high living, which just meant he didn't follow the extreme rules of the samanas. This contrast just highlights that even perfection is subject to worldly interpretation.
So Siddhartha and Govinda travel to Savatthi, to the Jetavana Grove where Gautama lives. They just observe the community, the monks in yellow robes, the quiet devotion. They even see the Buddha himself going out to beg in the morning, which shows his humility.
And in the evening, they finally hear him preach. Gautama speaks of suffering, the origin of suffering, and the path to release, the 4 main points, and the Eightfold Path. His voice is described with its incredible serenity, like a star in the heavens.
And now we get to the true intellectual turning point of the whole novel, the most important event of this section. Govinda joins the Buddha's community. He's found the concrete teaching he was always looking for, but Siddhartha refuses.
This is such a necessary separation. Govinda, the follower, has found his perfect system. But Siddhartha, the seeker, realizes that even the most perfect teaching is still, at the end of the day, just words.
He approaches the Buddha privately with immense respect, acknowledging his perfection. He pays homage to the man. But then he politely objects to the teaching itself. And this is just a profound philosophical moment.
Siddhartha points out what he sees as the fundamental limitation of any teaching. The doctrine of salvation, this idea of rising above the world, it introduces a small gap that breaks the unity of the world.
He acknowledges that the Buddha's words perfectly describe the unity of the world, the stream of cause and effect. But this idea of salvation, of escaping the stream,
is something strange, something new, something that can't be proven within that unity. If everything is one, how can one part of it be saved and another part be suffering?
It's a critical question about Hesse's philosophy, isn't it? If the world is a perfect, unbroken chain, then salvation from that chain has to be an intellectual idea, not an experiential one.
Exactly. And Siddhartha fears that if he followed the Buddha, he would only be fooling himself. The self would just continue to live and grow, but in disguise as a follower who is just adhering to dogma.
He sees his own intellectual arrogance. He knows he could master the teachings without ever truly embodying the truth.
He tells Gautama directly, "Wisdom cannot be communicated or taught. It must be found through one's own seeking." And the Buddha just listens quietly, and then warns him against being trapped in the thicket of opinions and the conflict of words.
But Siddhartha is firm. He has to find the path himself. He separates from Govinda, stating it so plainly, "Tomorrow, Govinda, I will leave you." This rejection of the ultimate teacher is the most radical thing he's done yet.
And it clears the stage for his descent. This is where the narrative shifts dramatically. Having rejected knowledge, self-denial, and even enlightened teaching, he now steps into part 3, the path he previously scorned. Samsara, the life of the senses and riches.
Chapter 4 is this profound philosophical pivot, an awakening to the world. As he's walking away from Jetavana, he has this almost dizzying realization of how deaf and, well, stupid he'd been as a samana.
He realizes he committed the ultimate intellectual fallacy. He says, when you read a book, you don't despise the letters and punctuation marks, calling them worthless shells. You study them, you read them. But he had presumed to despise the letters and signs of the physical world, his senses, his eyes, his tongue, calling them an illusion.
He resolves that his senses are fine things, and that he has to listen to that inward voice wherever it leads him. He even draws a parallel to Gautama. Why did Gautama sit under the bush tree? Not because he was reading a text, but because he heard a voice in his heart. Siddhartha resolves to follow only that inner command.
And this immediate shift is the pivotal moment here. He's moving from the abstract to the concrete, the physical plane. And the world responds immediately. Near a village, he meets his first temptation. A young woman washing clothes. He notices her moist lips gleam when she smiles.
That detail is so powerful. It's the first time the external world has really drawn him in through physical desire. It marks his return to the world of the body.
So he prepares himself for the town. And this is a huge symbolic act. He finds a barber's assistant, gets his dry, bristly samana beard shaved off, his hair oiled. He bathes. He's transforming his exterior to match his new interior resolution.
And that's when he encounters Kamala, the courtesan. The most important event of this part of his journey is really this meeting and his decision to shave his beard and head into town. He observes her so closely, her bright, clever face, her red mouth like a freshly cut fig, her artful eyebrows.
His interaction with her marks his full initiation into samsara. Chapter 5, Kamala and Kamaswami, is where the game of riches and the senses really begins.
When he meets Kamala, she is just immediately practical. She sets the price of love. She tells him he needs 3 things, and quickly: money, clothes, and shoes. And she specifies he needs a lot of money to be her friend.
So he offers the only currency he has from his past life, his 3 arts: thinking, waiting, and fasting. He also offers poetry and recites this beautiful, witty verse that just completely subverts his Brahmin past.
He says, "Better," thought the young samana, "to make sacrifices to the fair Kamala than to offer sacrifices to the gods." He's mocking his own spiritual journey, deliberately replacing sacred duty with profane pleasure. Kamala is amused, but she repeats, "You need money."
So she recommends him to the merchant Kamaswami, which begins his immersion in the world of trade. And he quickly becomes part of it. But the defining paradox of this entire stage is that he treats it all as a game that did not stir his heart.
This is the critical insight we have to unpack. He's physically there, he's a merchant, a lover, a gambler, but his true self remains fundamentally detached.
He's not a real merchant because he's never absorbed in it. He never fears failure, never worries about loss. When Kamaswami tries to make him share in the losses to foster some anxiety, Siddhartha just laughs and says, "Oh, well, this transaction has gone badly." It infuriates Kamaswami.
And Siddhartha is very explicit about this distance. He tells Kamaswami, "I have learned from you how much a basket of fish costs. That is your knowledge. But I did not learn how to think from you."
He's mastered the external mechanics of the world without internalizing its values.
At the same time, Kamala is teaching him the art of love, of physical connection. He learns that pleasure is impossible without giving it, that every touch has a secret. She teaches him this profound physical reciprocity.
And Kamala, being this highly intelligent, disciplined courtesan, she understands this balance. She also has an inner sanctuary. She knows she possesses his body and his time, but never his soul. She always recognizes him as a samana.
But the critical pivot here is that this distance, this observer status, it isn't sustainable. The very act of playing the game eventually wears down the observer.
Which is where we move into the true descent, Chapter 6. Discontent and the sickness of riches. Hesse is basically arguing you can't just observe samsara without being contaminated by it.
Okay, before we dive into Siddhartha's ultimate descent and his riverine rebirth, we just want to encourage you to subscribe to DFC Books so you never miss a deep dive into philosophy, literature, and knowledge. Your support really helps us explore these rich texts in the detail they deserve.
So, Siddhartha slowly starts to acquire the characteristics of the ordinary people he used to despise. Childishness, anxiety, a deep discontent. He starts to envy them for the one thing he lacks, their ability to truly feel the importance of their lives, the depth of their love.
He only seems to learn the unpleasant things.
Yeah.
Laziness, impatience,
Yeah.
and his vices, greed, anxiety, the passion of the game, they become a chain and a burden. It's not a game anymore. It's trapped the previously untouchable self.
The gambling addiction becomes the central metaphor for his decline. He gambles with this increasing fervor, staking huge sums of money, jewels, up to 10,000 on a single throw. And it's a strange form of self-contempt. He's doing it to mock his own contempt for riches.
He's chasing a feeling. He seeks the terrible and oppressive anxiety of the high stakes because that fear is the only heightened feeling left in his otherwise satiated, tepid, insipid existence. He needs that pain just to prove he's still alive. And this self-hatred spirals. He becomes hard, impatient. He even starts dreaming of money at night.
And he feels this continual nausea with himself. His perfumed hair, the smell of wine, the soft, flabby appearance of his skin. He feels like he's eaten and drunk too much, and he just wishes he could vomit it all up.
This deep self-detestation leads to the most important event of this section. The dream and his flight. He dreams of Kamala's small, rare songbird dying in its golden cage. He takes the dead bird out and just throws it away onto the road.
When he wakes up, he's horrified. He realizes that dreams symbolize him throwing away everything good and valuable in himself. The inner voice, the capacity for true seeking. He feels like a shipwrecked man, and overwhelmed by this deep sadness, he flees the town, finally putting an end to his self-detestation.
And Kamala, when she hears he's gone, she isn't surprised. She always knew he was a samana, a pilgrim. She actually rejoices that she had possessed him fully on their last occasion, recognizing that he had to complete this necessary detour.
This flight is the necessary prelude to his rebirth, leading us into part 4. Om and Unity, the stage of the ferryman.
Chapter 7, By the River, opens with an absolute spiritual crisis. Siddhartha reaches the river and he's at the point of no return. He stares into the water, wishing the fishes and crocodiles would devour his corrupted and rotting body, this sluggish and misused soul. He's about to fall headlong into the water, intending suicide.
This despair is so critical. He tried to kill himself through discipline as a samana, and he tried to kill it through worldly debauchery. Both methods failed, resulting only in this nausea and despair.
But then, this moment of profound grace, from a remote part of his soul, from the past of his tired life, he hears a sound. One holy word, one syllable, Om. The ancient beginning and ending of all Brahmin prayers, meaning the perfect one or perfection. The sudden memory of unity saves him.
He awakens after this long sleep, feeling as if 10 years have passed. He looks at the world like a new man. He realizes he's been saved not by knowledge or effort, but by the spontaneous emergence of the unified self.
And who should appear but a samana who had been watching over him? It's Govinda, still wandering, still seeking. And Govinda is just utterly confused by Siddhartha's fine, perfumed clothes and his general air of worldly wealth.
Siddhartha gives him this wonderful answer, reflecting his new perspective. He says, "The world of appearances is transitory. The style of our clothes and hair is externally transitory. The external form just doesn't matter anymore, because he understands the unity beneath the surface."
He reflects on his journey, how he'd boasted of his 3 noble arts, fasting, waiting, and thinking, all of which he'd completely lost. But he realizes that his path, full of stupidity and vice and despair, was necessary.
He had to sink to the greatest mental depths, face thoughts of suicide so that he could be emptied completely and become a child again, free to accept life. He sees the spiritual necessity of his failure.
Which leads to his pivotal choice, the decision to settle by the river. This is the most important event here. He feels this overwhelming love for it. He believes that whoever understood this river and its secrets would understand all secrets. He's turning from words and teachers to a direct, living symbol of truth.
In Chapter 8, The Voice of the River, he finds his new teacher and companion in Vasudeva, the quiet, radiant, and intensely serene ferryman. Vasudeva isn't a guru, he's more like a vessel of unity.
And Siddhartha begins his real learning by just observing the river's first secret, that the water continually flows and flows, yet it's always there, it's always the same, and yet every single moment, it's new.
It's the perfect embodiment of Brahman unity and flux at the same time. And Vasudeva explains that for most people, the river is just an obstacle. But for a select few, it becomes holy. They hear its voice. They share the same thoughts while listening to it.
This serenity is then shattered by the intrusion of samsara again, in its most personal form. News spreads that Gautama is dying, drawing huge numbers of pilgrims to see him one last time.
And among them is Kamala. She'd retired from her life as a courtesan, given her garden to the monks, and taken refuge in his teachings. She arrives on foot with her young son.
This moment is a huge pivot. Near the ferry, Kamala is bitten by a small black snake and collapses. Vasudeva carries her to the hut. Siddhartha looks up, sees the boy's face, which feels strangely familiar, and then he recognizes Kamala.
And his heart just beats quickly. He knows instantly that this proud, hard-featured boy is his son. Kamala dies, but not before confirming it. Siddhartha grieves, looking at her pale face, her old, tired mouth, remembering how in the spring of his life he had compared her lips to a freshly cut fig. The cycle returns to him personally.
Which brings us to Chapter 9, The Pain of Fatherhood. And this is the most important part of this section. He now faces this difficult task of raising a son who is proud, hard-hearted, and completely opposed to living in a hut with two old men.
This is Siddhartha's greatest test. The introduction of genuine selfless love coupled with a genuine overwhelming pain of attachment. He tries to raise the boy with gentleness and patience, but his son just resists him completely.
And this is where Vasudeva, the silent sage, delivers the most critical lesson. He warns Siddhartha not to chain the boy with his love and goodness. The boy is trapped in his own cycle of samsara.
Vasudeva uses Siddhartha's own journey as the lesson. He asks, who protected Siddhartha, the samana, from samsara, from sin, greed, and folly? Could his father's piety protect him? The answer, which Siddhartha himself proved, is no. He had to experience it all.
This forces Siddhartha to confront the immense arrogance of trying to interfere with his son's destiny. He recognizes he can't spare the boy his own sorrows. The boy has to follow his own call. But the pain is almost unbearable.
When Siddhartha confesses this pain, his failure is apparent. Vasudeva takes him to the river, and Siddhartha listens with a new, unified intent. He hears the river's song of the thousand voices: sorrow, pleasure, good, evil, laughter.
But this time he recognizes them all together as the music of life. He isn't escaping the voices, he's embracing them all as one coherent whole.
And when he hears them all together without binding his soul to any one particular voice, without judgment, the thousand voices resolve into one holy word: unperfection.
This is the absolute peak of the novel, the moment of ultimate enlightenment. His individual, seeking self merges into unity. His pain and attachment just disperse.
The wound of fatherhood heals, not by getting his son back, but by accepting the necessity of the pain. He ceases to fight his destiny, and Vasudeva's radiant, serene smile appears on his face. Vasudeva, having fulfilled his purpose, silently departs into the oneness.
Siddhartha remains, radiating the serenity. And this brings us to the final, dense, philosophical core of the novel, where the ultimate wisdom is imparted.
In the final chapters, Govinda returns. He's an old man now, still seeking, still part of the Buddhist community, but still restless. He asks the aged Siddhartha for wisdom, seeing the profound peace in his eyes.
And Siddhartha delivers the central lesson of the entire novel. He tells Govinda, knowledge can be communicated, but not wisdom. One can find it, live it, be fortified by it, but one cannot communicate and teach it.
And this leads to a fundamental philosophical critique of any teaching system, even a perfect one like the Buddha's. Siddhartha explains that to express truth in words, you have to divide the world into opposites: samsara and nirvana, illusion and truth, suffering and salvation.
I have to challenge that for a second. If the whole point of the novel is that words fail, why does Hesse spend an entire novel using words to describe the process?
That's the essential paradox, and it's one he grapples with brilliantly. The novel isn't a teaching, it's a map of a journey. Siddhartha explicitly says the world itself is never one-sided. It only seems incomplete when viewed through the lens of language, which relies on division. The novel teaches by showing the process of rejecting words.
So Siddhartha's ultimate realization is one of radical acceptance, non-duality. In every truth, the opposite is also true.
Precisely. He confirms, the world, Govinda, is not imperfect or slowly evolving. No, it is perfect at every moment. A profoundly radical statement.
Wait, okay. If the world is perfect at every moment, how do we account for the suffering, the greed, the pain he felt with his son? How can a murderer plunging a knife into a body be perfect?
This is where the concept of timelessness comes in. Siddhartha argues that the potential Buddha already exists in the sinner. The sinner isn't on the way to a Buddha-like state. His future is already there, existing alongside his sin. Everything is necessary.
He explains that in deep meditation, you can dispel the illusion of time and see all past, present, and future at once, like seeing the entire river. In that timeless vision, everything is perfect. everything is Brahman.
And this leads him to a conclusion on love and the physical world, the things he despised as an illusion. He argues that love for the world of appearances is the most important thing.
He loves a stone, a tree, or bark because they are things, concrete objects. You can love things. You can't love words or teachings which lack hardness, softness, color, smell, or taste.
He loves the stone, not because it might become a spirit someday, but because it is stone now, and at the same time it is animal, God, and Buddha. It worships Om just by being what it is.
He knows his words about love contradict Gautama's teachings of detachment, but he trusts experience over words, knowing the contradiction is just an illusion. He knows he's at one with Gautama, who acted out of a deeper love for humanity.
Finally, Govinda, still skeptical, asks to see this true peace. And Siddhartha offers him the final vision, the most important event of this final part.
He shows Govinda the flowing cycle of life from the river. Govinda sees all at once a newborn child, a murderer, couples in love, corpses, animals, gods like Krishna and Agni.
All these forms are constantly changing, being reborn, loving, hating, destroying each other. They don't truly die, they only change. Only time stands between one face and another.
And when Govinda sees this whole constant flowing cycle without the illusion of time, everything resolves into perfection. He is finally liberated, seeing the radiant smile on Siddhartha's face, realizing it is the same serene smile he once saw on the illustrious one, Gautama, all those decades ago.
So the ultimate lesson of Siddhartha is the journey itself. It's this non-linear path from intellect to self-denial, to the chaos of the senses, and finally to radical acceptance and unity found only through direct experience.
And the core takeaway is that the seeking self, the learned and intellectual one, that part of him had to die so that true wisdom, which can't be taught, could finally be found. He learned that everything, sin, lust, despair, was necessary for him to learn not to resist the world, but to grant it his total love.
Which leaves us with a provocative thought. If the world is truly perfect at every moment, and every action is necessary, then the burden of constant striving and judging just falls away. So how does that realization compel you to act in your own life? How do you live in a world that is already complete when all your instincts tell you that it must be fixed?
That is something to ponder as you reflect on the serene smile of Siddhartha and the timeless vision of the river. Thank you for tuning in to DFC Books. We hope this deep dive into Hermann Hesse's masterpiece enriches your understanding. We look forward to hearing your requests for our next deep dive.